Перше за всім я хочу подякувати Канадському інституту українських студій за запрошення виступити, за запрошення, щоб виступити перед вами і прийняти участь в цій дуже важливій конференції. If you follow our, on the screen, you'll see that the title of my talk today is Cultivating Our Legacy. I've chosen to focus on the question of our financial legacy. And the subtitle there says that Cultivating Our Legacy, both a consortium of directors of Ukrainian studies and a network of fundraising organizations promoting universities and endowments are needed now to help protect and expand institutional endowments for Ukrainian studies at Canadian universities. This talk will summarize information and draw on some recently collected data that informs us about the trends relating to institutional endowments in the three prairie provinces here of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Focuses on several key questions regarding the endowments funding the core administrative finances of Ukrainian centers. So I will not be discussing the cost of courses, teaching, curricula, archives, libraries, and so on. I'm going to be discussing solely the money that funds the endowments of Ukrainian centers in these three provinces. The research has been guided by a series of questions, which you'll see in, on that slide. I'll just identify 3 or 4 to give you a flavor for the study. It is looking at the nature of the governance system overseeing Ukrainian studies endowments. Secondly, we're looking at how many Ukrainian studies institutions are there in the prairie provinces, and how do they differ from one another? What's the market value of the money that we have at these institutions? How much revenues are generated by these institutions? What are the budgets of the centers that we've been discussing? And of course, what can be done to stimulate a more positive climate to build a relationship with donors? So answers to these questions were collected via published annual reports, 24 confidential and private interviews with selected knowledgeable respondents over the past 8 months to consolidate the information or the trends that are out there. First of all, just a word about historical perspective with respect to endowments in Canada. Over the past 125 years, Ukrainian Canadians have carried the bulk of financing of many organizational systems that provide or make up the Ukrainian community, or more accurately, the community of communities, because the Ukrainian community of communities has many dimensions. The fundraising has been in the multi-millions of dollars. It's gone to support our religious institutions, our community centers that are built on a variety of ideologies, the entire credit union system that we have, a vast, dense and organizational system, and most recently, Ukrainian studies, teaching, researching, publishing institutions at Canadian universities. Since the 1950s, individual Ukrainians in Canada and the United States have donated sums of money to create endowments that generate these annual investments to finance the projects in Ukrainian studies. We have, to date, institutions existing in 7 cities of Canada, and the endowments can be found in Edmonton, Saskatoon, Victoria, London, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Ottawa. I may have missed someone. Prior to the creation of these endowments, Ukrainian content courses were not taught at universities, despite Ukrainians having been settled in North America since the 1880s and since the 1890s here in Alberta. So the information that follows focuses on 4 universities in Western Canada, namely University of Alberta, MacEwan University, which is here in Edmonton, and the Universities of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. This is the first study of its kind. Its purpose is to begin a dialogue among Canadian professionals in Ukrainian studies that could result in coordinated action, enabling Ukrainian Canadians in the 21st century to develop a strategic plan that serves to protect the endowments and expand them. So the report unquestionably provides empirical evidence that endowments have proven to be the central element for the creation and development of Ukrainian studies in Western universities. As much as we have seen the diminishment of Ukrainian studies that are student-driven in terms of course attendance, the future for Ukrainian studies is clearly in increasing further endowments. The history of the 6 centers in Prairie Canada demonstrates that the endowments have occurred in 3 different periods or 3 different waves, each having different sets of objectives. During the 1920s to 1960s, donors focused basically on religious institutions. In the 1970s and 80s, new Ukrainian institutions were endowed to enhance community participation in multiculturalism. Most recently, from the 1990s to the present, the gifting of endowments has been motivated largely by a desire to build Canada-Ukraine inter-university relations that enable academics to study and advance the independence and sustainability of Ukraine as a democratic state and society that aspires to join the European Union. The institutions that were endowed during these 3 periods all continue to exist today, and they play their specific roles individually and simultaneously. However, each is structured differently depending on its purpose, different operating methods, and different expected outcomes and products. So let's take a look at Table 1. I hope you're able to make it out. Let me just say that the 6 institutions are, from top to bottom of this chart, St. Andrew's College at the University of Manitoba. Now, the college was created through provincial legislation, and since 1963 has had a signed land agreement with the University of Manitoba. It has its own board of governors, drawn from the Sobor of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, that is elected at annual meetings. You've heard earlier today Roman Yereniuk speak about the Center for Ukrainian Studies, so I won't say much more about it, except to point out that after being established in 1981, it has been run by by a policy council, of which 6 out of 10 members are from the community. The Cool Folklore Center at the University of Alberta has a signed agreement establishing the center, with 3 out of 8 of its members being drawn from the community. The Ukrainian Resource and Development Center has right now a particular situation where there is both a chair of Ukrainian culture and the Ukrainian Resource and Development Center, both of which have been endowed by the community. As a result, the community foundation that negotiated these relationships currently has a 5-year agreement signed with the president of the university, defining the role of the college foundation in raising money and how it is spent at MacEwan University. The Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, being in the Faculty of Arts now, originally having been at vice president level in terms of interdisciplinary studies, reports to the Faculty of Arts and is governed by the General Faculties Council of the university. And finally, the Prairie Center that we've heard about from Dr. Cordan is at St. Thomas More College, which is a federated college with the University of Saskatchewan. So the table that you see before you demonstrates that of the 6 institutions named, St. Andrew's College has negotiated the most comprehensive agreements in the Ukrainian studies field. The college was created by an act of the Manitoba government. It joined the University of Manitoba on similar terms that govern other professional colleges, namely the Anglican and Roman Catholic colleges. And it also has a land lease agreement as well as benefits from the internal university financial and administrative structure. 3 out of the 5 institutions, that being the Center for Ukrainian Canadian Studies in Manitoba, the Folklore Chair, and the Center at MacEwan University, have been created as an internal constituents of the university by General Faculties Council, but also are supported by community fundraising groups that have established endowment to benefit their institutions with money in the community foundation, but benefiting the program at the university. In fact, 2 out of those 3 organizations are investing their endowments externally with the Shevchenko Foundation, rather than only with the University Foundation. These community organizations have developed a working relationship in Ukrainian studies, but remain independent registered societies outside the university. I emphasize this because I've come to the conclusion that this model is probably the most effective for the future. That is, there should indeed be endowments at the university legitimating these institutions, but the community would be wise to also invest university money aimed to generate revenue for universities in community foundations because of their lower management fees and very often better return on investment. Table 2, which has just gone up, gives you an idea of the endowments as they stand today. You will see that the tables are divided into 2 columns. The first column are monies that I've, in my judgment, have assigned either to Ukraine or Ukrainian Canadian studies. These are arbitrary, and we can discuss them perhaps in the future. But at this point, St. Andrew's College has invested $5.7 million with the Shevchenko Foundation to benefit St. Andrew's College at the University of Manitoba. The Center for Ukrainian Canadian Studies has also a $1.8 million endowment, which is managed by the university. The Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, this is an estimate or a guesstimate perhaps, in my view, has its funds split into 2 categories. $22.5 million plus 5 core positions funded by the university at the head office, totaling perhaps close to $30 million that I've attributed to the work in Ukraine. $2.5 million I've attributed to the work with Ukrainian Canadian Studies. The Cool Folklore Center, in my view, has $12.5 million in endowment. Of that, just over $8 million is in cash, and they also are the beneficiaries from university-funded positions, 2.5 university-funded positions, which make up that difference between 8 and 12. The Ukrainian Resource Development Center at MacEwan University holds $7.5 million, and I've attributed that to the work mainly in Ukraine. The Prairie Center for Ukrainian Heritage of Saskatchewan has a $1.9 million. So in total then, if you see at the bottom of the chart, funds dedicated to work in Ukraine are today approximately $30 million in the Prairie region and approximately $24.3 million for Ukrainian Canadian Studies, for a total of $54 million. That's a market value of the endowments that we hold in the Prairie region today. Table 3, the estimated annual expenditures. In general, universities pay between 3 and 4% of earned interest per year. So I've done this guesstimate for the sake of our discussion. The budget at St. Andrew's College spent in their work $1.2 million a year. The Center for Ukrainian Canadian Studies, University of Manitoba, $200,000 a year. CIUS, approximately $1.5 million per year. That includes the 5 physicians that are core funded by the university. The Ukrainian Resource and Development Center of MacEwan College, $264 million. And the Prairie Center at the University of Saskatchewan, $56,000. In other words, approximately $3.8 million every year is spent by the budgets of these 6 institutions. This begins to give us a scope of what it is we're talking about, because sometimes we need some facts to back up the recommendations that we intend to be making for the future. Sorry, am I still okay with time?
Yep.
Thanks. I just want to go on then to Table 4 and give you an idea of the people that are employed by these funds. I won't go into an explanation of how these numbers are generated, except to say that I've counted sessionals in the sense that 4 full courses would represent a full-time equivalency, an FTE. So the 6 centers in total, in my view, currently are employing 14.8 academic faculty and 14.5 support staff, for a total of 29.3 positions that are funded solely by the endowments provided by the Ukrainian community and matching dollars from government. The endowments cover costs for 19.5 positions. 10 of them are academic, 5 of them are, or 4.5 of them are for support positions. And the endowment revenues cover twice the number of positions as do university funds. Just a word or two about Winnipeg and Edmonton. They're very comparable. I would say that in total there are 12 positions funded at the University of Manitoba, taking the Theological College into consideration, as well as the center, and 17 positions here in Edmonton. Having given you some of these numbers, I now just like to briefly mention some of the challenges that are facing these endowment funds. We need, and you've heard from others, so I won't say more about it, but constant administrative restructuring in university has affected the way these funds are collected and administered. Things have changed. There is a corporatization of university structures now that really was unimaginable in Professor Lupul's day. The recapitalization of endowments is not necessarily done automatically. In fact, unless your agreements specifically say that 20% of earned revenue should be put back into the capital to keep pace with inflation, the university won't do it. In fact, there's situations I run across where there has been some dispute over these matters. There is a danger that endowment positions in Ukrainian studies are being changed to other disciplines. When a position is endowed, but there is no student demand, the university exercises its right to assign teaching load to the professor according to the university's need. And even though you may be a Ukrainian specialist, you will end up teaching a subject comparatively that was not your prime interest, or the prime interest of why the donor gave that money in the first place. Now, there's little cooperation among the Ukrainian centers on this matter. In fact, it's not discussed. And that leads me to suggest my first of 2 recommendations that I mentioned at the outset. I believe there needs to be a consortium of directors of Ukrainian studies centers formed that meets annually to discuss both academic projects and administrative projects. And secondly, I believe that we need to create a national network of fundraising organizations to promote endowments in order to create a new kind of dialogue about endowments. We've heard about the need for additional and new endowments. The individual personal relationship building, which was done in the past, has to be replaced by a much more sophisticated institutionalized form of endowments where the community is asked to fundraise on strategic priorities that are determined by the academy. But those priorities have to be described, explained to people why they are our priority, and I believe that there are many, many donors out there that are willing to give. Certainly there's lots of money in the Ukrainian community, as long as they're persuaded that their return on investment is worth the confidence they place in us. Thank you very much.